The heavy envelope arrived on a chilly Tuesday morning, sliding through the mail slot at exactly 9:14. I know the precise minute because I later pulled the security footage, watching the crisp paper flutter onto the hardwood floor. Inside was a certified document from a prestigious law firm, announcing that I was the primary beneficiary of my grandfather Donald estate. He had passed away 6 weeks prior, at a funeral my own parents intentionally hid from me. Before we dive into the receipts, let me know in the comments below what country you are watching this video from, and don't hesitate to drop your name so I can personally welcome you to the community. They decided that $21 million was worth more than their eldest son. Welcome back to Clara Family Lab, the channel where the quiet observers keep the receipts, and toxic families learn that silence is never the same thing as surrender. If you have ever watched a relative smile at you while secretly erasing your name from a legal document, this story is for you. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and let me explain how everything unfolded. My profession is the entire mechanism of justice in this story, as I am an estate planning attorney. For over a decade, I have structured trusts, drafted wills, and sat across from individuals trying to protect their lifework from conditional love. I read legal binding clauses the way normal people read facial expressions. I understand exactly what a will says, what it implies, and the precise legal methods families use to manipulate them. My grandfather Donald built his massive wealth the traditional way, spending 4 decades developing commercial real estate across the region. He was a meticulous man who shook hands on deals but read every single line of the contract twice before signing. Donald was not outwardly affectionate, but he showed his warmth by constantly showing up. He attended my law graduation and sent handwritten birthday cards that were always exactly 3 sentences long. My parents, especially my mother Evelyn, managed Donald with calculated public displays of affection as his health declined. When Donald relocated to an assisted living facility, Evelyn coordinated the move and installed herself as the primary emergency contact. My father Vance drove the moving truck, and they immediately posted photos on social media with captions about family values. They were performing care in public, while I was visiting him entirely in private. Donald passed away on a quiet Sunday morning at the age of 81. I only discovered his death 3 days later when a former neighbor spotted the newspaper obituary and called me. The published notice listed my parents and my younger brother Austin as survivors, but my name was completely omitted. I did not call my parents, but I screenshot the obituary, printed it out, and placed it inside a new folder on my desk. The formal letter from the attorneys arrived 6 weeks later, prompting me to schedule a meeting. I drove to their downtown office on a Thursday morning wearing my best courtroom suit and carrying a notepad. The senior partner, a seasoned lawyer named Arthur, sat across from me with a large evidence box and a 47-page trust agreement. Donald had secretly revised his entire estate plan years prior, right after my parents moved him. The crucial amendment was dated April 4th, just 11 days after Evelyn took those Facebook photos. Donald had designated me as the sole beneficiary of $17 million in liquid assets and investment accounts. The commercial real estate portfolio, valued at $4 million, also came to me, except for a Virginia property left to his loyal housekeeper Brenda. My parents were left with $25,000 each and a sealed note. Arthur slid the cardboard box across the table, revealing a chess piece, a graduation photograph, and the unopened envelope. Written on the back of the photo in my grandfather's distinct handwriting were the words "She reads the fine print, always has." I turned the picture over without opening the note yet, asking Arthur to explain the backstory. My parents had actually tried to declare Donald mentally incompetent to seize control of his wealth. The medical assessment proved Donald was completely lucid, prompting him to quietly transfer his legal representation to Arthur. He instructed the firm to document every single unauthorized financial inquiry my parents made through the facility office. Arthur handed me a 4-inch file filled with their manipulation attempts, which I reviewed for hours. On page 31, a notarized letter from Donald explained his moves, ending with a sentence that changed everything. 2 weeks later, Evelyn called me with that overly sweet tone she reserves for situations she needs to manage. She claimed probate was getting complicated and invited me to a family dinner to sort things out together. At the table, Vance spoke arrogantly about the estate as if he were already running the show. They had not seen the actual will, so they were building an alternate reality based on pure greed. I ate my dinner quietly, asking absolutely no questions while they divided assets that did not belong to them. Afterward, Evelyn walked me to my car and suggested I should not be difficult about the upcoming distribution. I looked her in the eyes and asked who authorized the secret competency exam back in February. She turned pale, claiming ignorance. So I drove away and instructed Arthur to officially serve them the paperwork. 3 weeks after the legal notices hit their mailbox, my parents panicked and called an emergency family meeting. They brought in my brother Austin and my loud-mouthed Uncle Wayne, who had plenty of opinions but zero legal knowledge. Evelyn arranged the living room chairs in a tense circle, opening with a speech about presenting a unified front. She then directly accused me of using undue influence to manipulate an old man. I patiently let them speak before opening my folder and placing the original engagement letters on the table. I laid down the competency exam they had ordered, forcing Evelyn to stare at her own failed medical evidence. Next came the 4-inch log of their desperate financial inquiries, which instantly sucked the air out of the room. Evelyn began shouting that a jury would easily see through my legal tricks and favoritism. Vance stood up aggressively, hurling an insult he had never used against me in my entire life. I stared at him firmly, told him to sit down, and opened Donald's notarized letter to read aloud. My grandfather wrote that he watched his family manage his care like a property they intended to sell. Austin looked down at the floor, quietly admitting he never knew they excluded me from the funeral. I pulled the black queen chess piece from my pocket, placed it on their coffee table, and promised to see them in court. Their subsequent lawsuit was swiftly dismissed by a probate judge who reviewed the bulletproof timeline and Donald letter. The legal decree stated that the testator intent was not subject to any reasonable dispute. The $17 million trust dispersed immediately, and the commercial real estate transferred directly into my name. Austin apologized weeks later without making any excuses, and I told him I appreciated the honesty but needed space. I used a massive portion of the wealth to establish a permanent ethics scholarship in my grandfather's honor. I also funded a local legal clinic that protects low-income elderly citizens from predatory relatives. The black chess piece sits permanently on my office desk, a constant reminder of a brilliant man. My family made the fatal mistake of confusing my natural silence for compliance and weakness. They assumed someone who refused to argue would also be someone who refused to take decisive action. Donald never made that mistake because he understood strategy, and he knew I would defend his final wishes. If this story reminded you never to underestimate the quietest person in the room, remember to subscribe to Clara Family Lab.